Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. It's the 28th. Yeah, it's Maundy Thursday. If you're Catholic, I guess, or even I don't know if other Christian denominations celebrate that or honor that or whatever. So basically, it's the day before Good Friday. So coming up on the Easter weekend, we are in, we picked up a load on the West Coast, delivered it in Gordonsville, Virginia. Then we picked up a load in Edinburgh, Virginia, took that down to Norcross, Georgia, picked up last evening around this time in, it's 1700 in Cumming, Georgia at Tyson. That place is crazy. I'd never been there before, but it's like seriously, first of all, it's in the middle of a fairly nice town, like just like basically downtown, and there's no like internal traffic paths, especially for trucks at the Tyson complex, and so you have to like take surface streets and like do laps to get your load and stuff. Is a drop and hook. This is going to Elkton, Maryland, and we got to be up there at 3 o'clock in the morning is our appointment. So probably leave out of here. We're in basically South Hill, Virginia, off 85. Probably leave out of here about 1900, a couple hours. One thing that's kind of fun is I just been killing time because I actually slept. I feel well rested, but this truck stop, this loves all the like NASCAR teams are pulling in here with their trucks. So it's like the NASCAR, it's the NASCAR road race for the semis, and this is their pit stop. So I've seen like Newman Haas, I've seen Joe Gibbs Racing, and I'm not super into NASCAR, but I do think machines are cool. And these trucks are always like really nice and clean, and they're decorated, and so it's kind of fun to see them, and they're all really nice. So if I had a job if I was driving a truck for like a private entity, like I saw Penske Racing, that would be not a bad gig. And they do advertise them. I've seen Penske's. You got to live down in North Carolina because when it's not testing or racing season, you're basically like a maintenance man at the facility. So if you're somebody that's got some experience with, fixing plumbing or HVAC or whatever, and you got a CDL and you maybe have some experience moving high value stuff, or like I think they were looking, because I looked this up, you might be able to tell I looked this up a few years ago, and they were looking for people that had experience, like maybe moving cars. But it was a full-time job. I'm pretty sure it was salaried, and regular company benefits and stuff. So if I guess it could be kind of boring if you're just like, like you drive to Indianapolis and then you're just there every day at the track. And I mean, it could be exciting. Oh, the Raptor 24 car truck is pulling in here. I don't know a lot of the drivers anymore. I mean, I know Jimmy Johnson's still racing a smaller schedule, and I know a few of the names. But anyway, so it's kind of cool. They're cool trucks. And so getting back to those jobs. It's all about the season schedule, and it's all about testing, and like I know that like if you're doing the IndyCar, these aren't IndyCar guys, I don't think, these are NASCAR, but if you're doing IndyCar, you spend like basically the whole month of May in Indianapolis, and I'm sure that at some point it gets boring, because it's like anything that's like super exciting at first. After a while, when you do it all the time and you do it for your job, it probably it's probably not that interesting. And it wouldn't surprise me that there are days where there's like some obnoxious fans or, you know, drunkards and stuff. I used to go to the stock car races. My wife would be like, I don't want to go back there. Like when we were engaged. So this is the Hendrick Motorsports 24 Raptor car. Let me see, the driver's name will be on the back of the truck. He must have got fired. There's no name. Usually the driver's name is on the back. The sponsors on some of these are pretty interesting though. That truck that just went by is they're sponsored by Liberty University and Relay, you know, the payment system for the lumpers. They're sponsored by Relay. I'm gonna run that guy off the road later because I don't like lumpers. Actually, he probably has no idea what that's about. And you know, oh, here comes the Chevrolet. Let me see, this is Hendrick Motorsports also. This team, I'll give you the team number if you're into this. And again, I think the trucks are cool. They got cool paint jobs, they're really nice. So this is the number 5. This is Hendrick Motorsports. Their sponsor, they don't have their drivers' names. Valvoline, Mac Tools, pretty standard stuff. Anyway, it's kind of fun to watch. It's like being at a parade. So what are we doing? Oh yeah, so we're going up to Elkton. I don't know, had a pretty good week this week. I think we're probably up around 12,000 miles so far in this TNT process, so not too bad. I think this is like maybe day 17 of my trainee being on the truck. He's in taking a shower. Sometimes you witness history almost in real time, you know. And the other day we were delivering at the Walmart in Gordonsville, and so I was up, and we had like I think we had a 3:20 was our appointment. So we got there, you know, maybe around, I don't know, 2:40. So we were already in a dock, and I was just like scrolling through the internet, and I tapped on AP, which is Associated Press. That's, you know, news site. And it was like it wasn't even a headline. It was the like a news alert that the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore had been, you know, like hit by a ship and has collapsed. And I was like, holy shit. And then I started, you know, following it. And, you know, it's really bizarre. You know, when you live somewhere, like I've been living in Maryland on and off. And I say, well, I've been living in Maryland or own homes in Maryland since 1997, since May of 1997. And, you know, I went to law school in Baltimore. I've lived in that area a lot. And I never used the Key Bridge that much because it's not on a part of the Baltimore Beltway that I would typically transit, because I live kind of on the 180-degree opposite side of the city. But it's still ubiquitous, right? It's a big bridge, and you know, it's like, I guess if you lived on Staten Island and you just had the shadow of the Verrazano Bridge, you know, even if you didn't cross it that much, it would still just be there. Okay, so we got the Monster number 54 car pulling in. That might be Ty Gibbs. They're sponsored by Monster, which I've seen videos that Monster is related to the devil, but then also He Gets Us is there. Now the number 15 car, AM Racing, Hallie Deignan, that's pulling in. Oh, here's the number 34 Loves truck. That's a sweet ride. They got a Peterbilt. What's the one that it's the long hood, but not the 389? It's something. But that's a nice looking black truck. I'm not going to show you all these because you came here to see me, not pretty trucks. That's a Ford that the Loves crew is running. Anyway, you know, believe it or not, I had this epiphany a while ago that Prime should sponsor a NASCAR team. And there was a team that was like pulled out. I thought it was Newman Haas, but maybe it was Chip Ganassi. I think Chip Ganassi, like a couple of years ago, he left NASCAR. And so there was this opening, And I was like, man, Prime should jump on that, you know, just sponsorship and getting a new team in there. I thought it would be good for their business to sponsor that. It would be good for name recognition and stuff. And they could, you know, they could have like reefer trailers for their towing the, you know, moving the cars around, keep them nice and keep the cars comfortable. Yeah, so that bridge collapse was insane. Now, you know, of course, because I live in the area, but also I was in the Navy. I've you know, I know the rules of the road. I've conned warships, meaning I'm the guy on the bridge saying which way to turn, how fast to go, etc. I've done that in, and you know, I've driven a lot of small craft and stuff, you know, in the military, and I just, you know, well, I will say this. I've talked to some friends who are both a guy that ran drayage operations for a company at the Port of Baltimore, and I know other people that are like, have their master's licenses and stuff, and I you know, this is kind of a catastrophic thing because these massive civilian ships, this ship is almost 1,000 feet long, right? These massive civilian ships run with itty bitty tiny crews. Oh, the Dex Imaging number 21 truck is pulling out right now. They run with tiny crews, and you know, they don't, like in the Navy, it would be shocking and unconscionable that we wouldn't have somebody, for instance, in the steering gear room, or we wouldn't have somebody in the emergency generator room when we're doing a transit, when we have what they call sea and anchor detail. And it would be unimaginable that we wouldn't have people that could like drop the anchor if there was an emergency. But that's not how civilian ships operate. Everything is about profit. And the guys, this enormous ship has a crew of 33. But they can't, you know, they can't and don't react well to engineering casualties or pretty much anything else. And, you know, a lot of, you know, there are ships that are enormous ships that are transiting. Now, this would be in the open ocean, but they are transiting with sometimes billions of dollars worth of cargo on board with just like one guy on watch, or maybe two guys. And everybody just works a shift, right? Like, and it doesn't matter if it's not your shift, it's not your shift, right? And, you know, it's just, I mean, it is a corporate thing, but this ship, by the way, was involved in an incident in Antwerp in 2016. But one of the articles I saw that I hadn't really thought about this, and this is, it's just scary because it, while it's a freak accident, it's not as uncommon as you might think, where ships hit things that they're not supposed to. And there's plenty of video on YouTube of ships like coming into moor, but they're moving at like 6 knots when they're like 100 yards from where they're stopping. And by the way, 6 knots is really fast when you're talking about a vessel that displaces like 100,000 tons of water. But anyway, you know, part of what happened here was that this vessel was, it looked like it was moving fairly fast to me, given that the Port of Baltimore is not like, it's not super huge. And I don't know, you know, I don't know if there's maximum speed there, but you know what I think happened is, and I'm pretty sure they had some amount of right rudder on, some, you know, so maybe right standard rudder, which would be 15 degrees, and because they were coming out and they were going to make that turn to starboard to line up. And if you watch the video, you could see a blinking light really up high in the middle of the bridge. That's the place you're supposed to be. That's a navigation light. That's where you're supposed to be. So what happened is that they turned to they made a, they turned the rudder to the right to make that turn to starboard, but then they just kept going. And it may be that, that was the exact turn that like hooked them into that bridge pylon, that stanchion. Or it could be that they did get the rudder back, but they didn't get it back soon enough. I don't know if they got rudder back. I don't know if they got propulsion back. And the other thing I will say too is that there's a certain amount of speed, and this is going to vary by ship, but there's a certain amount of speed that you must have on, and it's called steerage way. That's the nautical term for it. Steerage way is the amount of speed that you must have, you must be going to get enough water flowing past the rudder, right? Because the rudder's this thing sticking down in the water. You got to get, you might be going 1 knot, but the rudder it wouldn't matter how you turn the rudder. It's not going to be pushing. There's not going to be enough water going past it for it to turn the stern of the ship. So it may be that they were coasting, got their rudder back, maybe didn't get main propulsion back, got their rudder back, but they didn't have enough steerage way to avoid, to turn the front of the ship away from that bridge pylon. And then, as far as the collapse goes, I mean, that's a steel truss bridge. Every piece of that bridge is dependent on every other piece of that bridge. That's just how they're engineered. And, all this, I've heard some conspiracy bullshit going on. It's like, it's pretty damn cut and dried. Because I've talked about conspiracies in the past, like how it's really tough to have a big conspiracy. And by the way, I used to have an office on the same street as the Harbor Pilots Association. And so those guys are not in command of the ship, but they have a lot of say over what the ship does. But a lot of these merchant vessels, they come into really tight places without the aid of tugs, because they have bow thrusters and they have variable pitch propellers, and they have things to get themselves pierside without any help. The upside of that is it doesn't cost you for tugboats, because tugboats are expensive. To have 3 or 4 tugs alongside is going to cost you probably, I don't know, I'd have to ask around, but it wouldn't surprise me to have 3 or 4 tugs. It's probably like, $20,000 an hour. So, and the tugboats are going to pick you up. They're going to be with you, for could be an hour or 2. So it's not cheap. But so they avoid using tugs, and most of the time it doesn't matter. But if they'd had tugs alongside when this happened, the tugs probably, the number 9 Napa Auto Parts truck is pulling out. The tugs probably would have saved that bridge. Now, the other thing, though, I was reading an article, and this was, they pointed out that that very same pylon was hit, I think back in, it's been a few years, like in the early 2000s. And the ship that hit it was only 400 feet. So that ship was less than half the size. And at that time, it only did it hit the pylon, it did maybe $400,000 worth of damage to the pylon. Because the pylon isn't just like straight up and down. When you saw that, if you watch the video, you saw that splash. That was when the ship, I can't remember its name. Anyway, it ran up. I'm pretty sure that it ran up the pylon, because the pylon is conical shaped. So the base is bigger than where it meets the stanchions that go up. But anyway, it's insane, and it's gonna huge impact. The Port of Baltimore, not just a huge impact on people in Maryland and trucks especially, because you can't. There's 2 tunnels that go through Baltimore, but you can't take hazmat through them. And that bridge dumps out very close to the Seeger marine terminal. There's a couple other terminals, but yeah, a huge impact. That bridge carries about, like, I don't know, 13, 14 million vehicles a year. But the Port of Baltimore itself is the #1 auto transit port. So cars coming from Europe and Japan. Also, it is the #1 heavy equipment export port. So if you've ever driven across I-68 in Maryland and you noticed, like, combines, tractors, cranes, all that stuff coming from John Deere, Case, Caterpillar, that's all going, if it's going east, it's going to the Port of Baltimore, almost guaranteed. Most of the equipment I see coming across there is new. The other reason they use 68 is because the Pennsylvania Turnpike has tunnels that they can't get through. But they're going to Baltimore. That's, and then Baltimore has not the biggest coal exports, but a lot of coal exports. And obviously this was a giant container ship, so they handle containers, not like some of the other ports, but it's a big port. I think it's by, I don't know if it's by dollar amount or volume, but whatever it is, it's the 8th largest port in the United States. So, and like I said, in some categories, it is the biggest port. So my friend that does drayage, he was like, man, it's going to be bad, because now everything, a lot of stuff, it's enormous, hundreds of billions of dollars of economic impact before this ever gets back to normal. So it's a huge deal. And I was saying to a friend, I hope that what they do is build a tunnel, actually. And the reason I hope they build a tunnel is because CSX has a tunnel that runs under Baltimore City, which, by the way, caught on fire after a derailment in 2001. That caused havoc. But part of the issue, and this CSX has already agreed to pay for modifications to that tunnel so they can run double stack intermodal trains through there. But really, if they built a new tunnel that was bigger, could handle tunnel traffic, like the Fort McHenry tunnel that's on I-95 that you may have gone through, where it's got shoulders and all this stuff, it would be next level, because then the railroad could have part of the tunnel and they could maintain that, and then the state, could have the other part of the tunnel for vehicular traffic, and then you would never have to worry about a bridge getting hit again. And I've certainly driven hundreds of times over the Bay Bridge down between Annapolis and Kent Island, both in a semi and cars. And I've driven over that bridge. In fact, I think the last time I went out there in a semi, there was a ship coming. It's a busy area. The Chesapeake Bay is busy, and there was a ship coming. And I've always wondered, what if they hit a pylon? So, I got the answer as far as the Key Bridge goes if a 1,000-foot ship hits it. But, yeah, so, anyway, you can tell I've certainly put a lot of thought into this, and it's just really a huge deal. And, of course, the loss of life. I'm grateful that it wasn't bigger. There's the number 20 Ream DeWalt truck. That's somebody, Christopher Bell, maybe, number 20 car. It's a Toyota. The truck's a 389 Pete. But yeah, the loss of life. And of course, I think all the people that are missing are immigrants. And it just points up that a lot of what gets done in America is done by brown and black people, and done by immigrants. And whether it's picking vegetables, slaughtering cows, filling potholes on bridges, mowing lawn, whatever it is, a lot of stuff that happens in this country is done by immigrants and people that are just here trying to make their lives better. And so it's really a shame that those guys, and it would be, you don't get to pick how you go a lot of times, but it probably was pretty goddamn scary if So anyway, I'm, sorry about that. So anyway, I wanted to talk. I know I've been talking for a little while, and if you're still with me, thanks. And I don't know if this will be clickbait. Like people always say, if I talk about anything other than the title, it's clickbait. But and kind of like, speaking of disasters, I've kind of started being a weather geek and paying closer attention, because I started watching some shows on history of like powerful storms, tornadoes, derechos, and stuff like that. And one of the storms that I watched on several, and the crazy thing is, a lot of these tornadoes that maybe weren't on my radar, pun intended, are in towns that I now go through, a few times a year. And I'll give you a perfect example: Greensburg, Kansas. The first time I went through Greensburg, and this is on 54 and 400 if you're going out to like Liberal or Dodge City or whatever, or even if you're just cutting through that way to get down towards New Mexico and go to the West Coast. And Greensburg got hit by an F5 tornado. And the first time I went to Greensburg, it reminded me a lot of La Plata, Maryland, where I used to go to court all the time, because La Plata is the county seat in Charles County, Maryland. And La Plata got hit by an extraordinarily fast-moving tornado. Like, the tornado that hit La Plata, Maryland, was going like 65, 70 miles an hour, which is kind of unusual, but and it had also come across the Potomac River. And so it was, and people don't think of Maryland as being in Tornado Alley, which it's not. But that storm, I think, was an F3, F4, and it leveled La Plata. And so everything in La Plata, including the courthouse, just pretty much everything in the downtown area is new. And it's one of those towns where stuff was rebuilt, but other stuff wasn't. And so there's big gaps. And it's just, I had that same, feeling when I went into Greensburg. I'm like, this place must have got hammered by a tornado, because there'll be like a street with like one house in the middle of the block, and then like two houses farther down, but then all these vacant lots and stuff. And so so I started thinking about these really violent storms, and I started hearing about like the Mayfield EF4 tornado that happened not last year, but in 2022 in December in Mayfield, Kentucky. There was a couple that was killed in their house because like they literally got a semi tractor came out of the sky and crushed them. And I started thinking about this, and I even subscribed to a new website, because I always keep track of the weather, because a lot of times people think about like, oh, well, wind and, going across Wyoming, you can get, flipped over. And that's true. And you can get flipped over any time of the year by gusty winds. And if you're empty, and I've put this chart up there before, but if you're empty, it doesn't take more than about a 40 to 45 mile an hour gust to blow you over. And even if you're fully loaded, if the wind is gusting above 60 miles an hour, you're susceptible to rolling over, at least if you've got a van or a reefer. Now, flatbed, probably a little bit higher if you're fully loaded, because you assume that there's not as much sail area. But every one of these storms, like the derecho that came across Iowa and Illinois in 2020, that thing had straight line winds of 140 miles an hour. But even 90 miles an hour, if you're perpendicular to the direction of the winds, you're going over. I don't care. If you got a van, you're not going to withstand, van, a reefer, you're not going to withstand 90 mile an hour winds coming off your beam, meaning the sides. And so I started, and so I signed up for this new website. It was only $9, or new app, I should say. $9. It's called Radar Omega. And here's just a screenshot I did looking at a severe thunderstorm warning. And you could see that they said, I think in this clip, this screenshot I took, even the winds in the severe thunderstorm were like going to up to 60 miles an hour. But here's a look at it. So it's like, it's kind of for weather geeks, and I'm starting to learn more and more about these supercells and tornadoes and stuff. And I do watch some storm chasers, although I think they kind of oversell it sometimes. But a lot of people that are victims of tornadoes, especially nocturnal tornadoes, are victims because they just don't know that there's a tornado even coming. And the other thing that I've learned from watching videos that are like retrospectives and almost documentaries is a lot of times people don't heed the warnings. And you know, like and I was telling somebody the other day, I was thinking about Springfield and Prime's terminal there. I don't know what the hurricane emergency plan is there. I don't know if there's a shelter, but I do know that in 2011, in May of 2011, there was an F5 hurricane that just blew Joplin, Missouri apart. And the thing is, Joplin's terrain, because a lot of times we think of tornadoes coming on really flat ground, Joplin's terrain is pretty much the same as Springfield's. Springfield is on what is called the Ozarks Plateau, the Ozarks Plateau. And I was like, you know, knowing what I've, you know, after learning about all these storms, and I mean storms going back into the 70s, and what these tornadoes are capable of. And I think we all conceptually are like, yeah, tornadoes can blow some shit around. But, you know, I think about the last time I was in Springfield. There's got to be 100 empty trailers sitting in that dirt lot out there past the pad. And then, I don't know, there's 100 more trailers just sitting, you know, on pavement. And there's so much stuff that even in like an 80-mile-an-hour thunderstorm or derecho would be totally getting underway. There's stacks of pallets. There's there's reefer units just sitting on pallets. There's cars. There's, you know, you name it, right? There's just junk everywhere. And I'm not saying junk like it's a junkyard. It's just there's stuff everywhere outside of buildings. And all of that is like, you know, those are huge missile hazards. And I was like, you know, I don't know. Like, if you got 200 truckers there just, you know, in their sleeper berths or whatever, or just eating in the cafeteria, like, where do we go? What do we do? Because it's not like we're all going to leave and outrun a storm if it's like, oh, yeah, there's a massive tornado, right? That's not going to happen. That's not going to work either. And the buildings, by the way, because, you know, a lot of what determines tornado damage, like the enhanced Fujita scale, is based on building construction. And a lot of the deaths in the Joplin tornado occurred in like big box stores. Well, big box stores use a lot of the same construction methods as the buildings that Prime has. And it's nothing against Prime, it's just how things are, right? So like the Plaza building and the other shops, like the tractor shop, trailer shop, and I know some of those are connected to other buildings, but the construction of those commercial buildings is not dissimilar to how a Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart or a grocery store is constructed. They're just a little smaller scale. But even a tornado with, say, not even an EF5, but like even like an EF3 with 140 knot winds would just, you know, decimate that terminal if it hit it. And I don't, you know, and that's even just sitting still, but that doesn't take into account stuff that happens out on the road. So anyway, I've been thinking about it, and I'm also one of those people that over my life, I am not clairvoyant. I'm not like some seer. You know, I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I do subscribe to the idea that sometimes I look at things and I'm like, okay, when has this happened? Because I know that everything will eventually happen. And I know that sounds weird to say, but I'll give you an example. In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger was going to be launched from Cape Canaveral. The morning of that launch, I was in the Navy. I was on the USS Barney, and I said to some shipmates that morning, I said, you know, one of these times, one of these space shuttles is going to crash. Now, I actually was thinking of a crash like landing, like they're trying to land back at Edwards Air Force Base and they just, you know, planes botch landings, right? I was like, they could botch a landing and have one of those things on live TV just crash and burn. I didn't anticipate that one of the rocket boosters would ignite and blow the whole thing into smithereens. But I did say there's gonna be a catastrophic event with a space shuttle. And so, of course, they delayed the launch. Well, right around lunchtime, they went up, and of course, we all know what happened with Challenger. And somebody said, dude, you were just saying that today. Now, I didn't call, you know, like the bank shot from the corner, right? I didn't call that. I just said something was going to happen. The odds of it, because I felt like eventually machines fail. Eventually something goes wrong. And, you know, the last EF5 tornado in this country, and by the way, the United States gets the vast majority of all tornadoes in the world are in the U.S. The vast majority of supercell thunderstorms in the world are in the U.S. And that's because of our geography and geology and metrology, I guess. And that's maybe a subject. Other people are way better at this than I am. By the way, if you really want to understand this stuff, there's a guy he has a channel called Convective Chronicles, and he's really good. I think he does have a master's in meteorology, and I think he works in Norman, Oklahoma, which is where the Storm Prediction Center is, but I feel like it shouldn't be there. I feel like that place is, you know, could get wiped out by a hurricane, or I mean, by a tornado. But anyway, that's where it is. It's kind of like the Hurricane Prediction Centers down in South Florida. It doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. So anyway, watch Convective Chronicles. It's a really good. It's very technical. A lot of the stuff I don't, you know, like when he first talked about it, I don't understand it, but then I started to kind of figure out what they were doing, because math is not my strong suit. But I am very interested in this stuff. So anyway, where I'm going with this is, I feel like we're not too far off from having an EF5 tornado or having an outbreak of, you know, EF3 strong, EF3s, EF4s, EF5s, all in the same day or all within a few days of each other in a spot in the United States. And, you know, a lot of us are just driving around fat, dumb, and happy, and we're not really paying attention to what's going on. And a lot of times we're probably in places that are prone to powerful tornadoes, and we don't understand that either. And I'll give you an example. This time of year, so March, April, even back, you know, going earlier in March, the southeast United States, like there's what they call the Dixie Alley, which is, you know, Mississippi, northern Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, parts of Louisiana. Those areas are susceptible to tornadoes, and most of the nocturnal tornadoes in America happen in the south, and they're often way more deadly than tornadoes in daylight. But then we have our traditional tornado alley going from like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. That's the traditional tornado alley, but that also extends over into southwest Missouri, right? Because the storm that leveled Joplin in 2011, that storm started in Kansas. But then there's another high tornado area in like the state of Iowa, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, later in the summer. And tornadoes have happened in every single state, I think. I don't think there's any state that's not ever had a tornado. And, you know, and there's a lot of myths about them, like they don't go across water. Well, we just had a pretty substantial tornado cross the Ohio River, and there's video of it if you look for it. Just, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. States in the northeast, you know, states that have a lot of mountains. There was an EF5 / powerful EF4 that went across Pennsylvania. It came out of Ohio, but it went through very, very rugged terrain in Pennsylvania that was mountainous. Now, nobody, you know, there's nobody really that lives out in that area. I mean, it's very sparsely populated. But the point is, there's no place that's not susceptible to a tornado in the U.S. if the conditions are right. Salt Lake City itself, Salt Lake City, like downtown, got hit by a tornado a few years ago. So there's no place that's not susceptible. Oklahoma City, they're getting ready to build the tallest building in America in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City downtown, to my knowledge, has never been drop kicked by some EF4, EF5 tornado. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. So anyway, I don't want to be paranoid about it, but I'm advocating being more weather aware than you normally are, and not just in the winter time. You know, trucking companies always talk about trucks jackknifing, sliding off the road. People talk about chaining up. But what people don't talk about is trucks getting jacked up in powerful thunderstorms, derechos, tornadoes. And that happens too. And even when people can see it. And a lot of times, this is final point. A lot of some of these most powerful tornadoes have been what is called rain wrapped, where people just thought it was a rainstorm coming across the sky. And what they didn't realize is that there was rain around the outside of the tornado. And so then it starts raining, and about 30 seconds later, the wind is blowing like 150 miles an hour. That has happened in several of these super powerful storms, including partially the Joplin storm, but definitely the 1990 Plainfield EF5 that went across Illinois. And by the way, meteorologists didn't even realize that was going on, because the radar back then wasn't as good as it is now. But anyway, I just share that with you. And you know, I'm happy to talk about this in other ways if this is something that people are interested in. I can tell you some of the things that I look at, some of the websites I use to really know what's going on around me. So anyway, thanks for hanging if you hung this long, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.